right, everyone. So this, where our panel series comes to a conclusion, but now here very excited to talk about the business sustainable side of things. And with us here, we are talking about transformative trends, profit, purpose, and the new sustainable economy. I have Jackowski here, this Chief Sustainability Officer at Mastercard. Again, thank you so much for having us in your space. This is fantastic. And then also João Campos, the Growth Manager at B Labs. And so we're going to talk more here again about sustainability in the context of using the not only the environment, but building businesses in a sustainable way. But let's start with the environment, because obviously that is also very important for business setup. I would love to talk to you and start with you, Ellen, and tell us more about the role of sustainability and what it means for businesses and why it's important for businesses.
Sure. Well, first of all, so excited to have this discussion during Fashion Week here at Mastercard. Do you think of fashion and Mastercard together? Obviously, you hopefully purchase a lot of fashion through your Mastercard. So anyway, fabulous to have you in this space. So, what's the importance of sustainability to business? Obviously, the importance is growing. It is paramount. It is urgent, right? We all have a responsibility as businesses to do the right thing. But sustainability is also an incredible opportunity, right? This transition to a low carbon, regenerative, sustainable economy, it's happening. It's inevitable. I think we all know this, at least those of us here in this room, and recognize the big business opportunity. So that's kind of how we think about it. At Mastercard, we have a net zero commitment to be net zero by 2040, a decade ahead of climate science, and we're well on our way. If you happen to see our 2023 ESG report, we reported that we grew our business, the net revenue, by 13%, which is fantastic, and we reduced our greenhouse gas emissions by 1%. So we're just at that point of seeing signs of decoupling growth from emissions, which is something I think all business leaders need to be striving for, particularly everyone who has set net zero goals, which we need to meet. So again, we think about it as both a responsibility, but also a big business opportunity.
Absolutely. I want to hop into that sustainability aspect of the environmental aspect of it a little bit more. Have you seen the pivot? We had the conversation before here also from consumers more supporting brands that have an environmental impact, a positive one.
Yeah, and again, where we sit at kind of at the center of the economy, we have 100,000 points of acceptance where you can use your Mastercard all over the world, 20,000 banking partners, and 3 billion cards in circulation. 8 billion people on the planet, 3 billion cards. We see a lot of consumption, right? So what is going on both with the merchants on our network who are offering more sustainable products and services, like many of you business owners here, and then what is the opportunity with those 3 billion cards in circulation and their owners choosing more sustainable products and services? We only see the trend and the interest both on the merchant side as well as on the purchasing side at the consumer level growing in this space. So the stats are only going up, and again, that reads to the opportunity that all of our businesses have to lean into this as an opportunity.
Wonderful, thank you. João, you are working with B Labs, and so not everybody is familiar with B Labs. I'm very happy that you're here. My company is a partner with B Labs as well. So the B Corp certification process obviously also is incorporating sustainability points for environmental impact, but it goes far beyond that. Please share a little bit of insights about what B Lab does.
Of course. So B Lab is a nonprofit network that has created what we call B Corp certification. It's a way for businesses of all sizes, all industries, to measure their impact across social and environmental standards. So our main product is an assessment called the B Impact Assessment. It's an online tool. It's free to use. Anyone can create an account and start measuring their impact for their business. The assessment has over 200 questions across environmental section, workers, community engagement, and governance. So it's pretty complex. And companies who perform well in that assessment can submit it for verification from us. They go through a pretty rigorous auditing process, and then they get certified as B Corps. So some of the most notable B Corps out there are companies like Patagonia or Ben & Jerry's that are very committed to their impact. But then we also have many companies that use our standards to measure their impact and benchmark across the industry, but that are not necessarily certifying. So Mastercard itself, we were just chatting earlier, uses some of our standards to measure their impact and benchmark across others.
Yeah, that's definitely a recommendation I give to any business owners, business startups, etc. Because when we looked at the sign-up process, the questionnaires, it was eye-opening, frankly. It was there were so many things, elements of like how is your board constructed, who are serving, where are you resourcing your products from. There are so many things that we haven't really thought about that can actually go into the setup process of your company, so you don't have to roll back everything in the end and then start from scratch, right? So it's very impactful. Alan, on the side of business sustainability, so how does Mastercard enable other partners of theirs to be more sustainable in business, and maybe also tying this into an environmental impact? How can be a partner of Mastercard be beneficial to a business owner?
Yeah, well, the way we think about kind of our theory of change to drive more sustainable consumption, it's inspire, inform, and enable. And we think Mastercard plays a unique role in each of those things, but then all of our partners on our network can also be a part of that. So what does inspire mean? Inspire means how do people change their mindset to want to live a more sustainable lifestyle? And so for us, we have our brand Priceless, right? How are we evolving what Priceless means to include that? To include living that sustainable, fulfilling lifestyle. A great example of a partnership we've had recently this year, and we're testing and learning, right? We're trying things out to see where do we find the momentum. We partnered with the Grammys. We've been a big sponsor of the Grammys for 17 years. SZA, one of the most Grammy-nominated artists this year, came out with a new song called Saturn on the Sunday night of the Grammys. The video was filmed in a forest. She was wearing a beautiful green outfit that, if you looked closely, had seeds all over it. Seeds that Conservation International, a partner of ours, helped pick out. All of her fans, her millions of fans, could then access and win those seeds. We shipped them in an eco package with a sign-framed photo of SZA. And this was all about inspiring those millions of fans to say, hey, SZA is prioritizing sustainability. SZA is thinking about the environment. Should I be thinking about the environment? Again, a test to see, does something like that work to inspire people to want to live a more sustainable lifestyle? The second piece, inform. So if you want to live a more sustainable lifestyle, how do you know what's more sustainable, right? There's greenwashing out there. There's a lot of information. Sometimes you see, on labels and things, the carbon footprint of your t-shirt or your tennis shoe. And how do you trust that, right? So at Mastercard, we have our first product, the carbon calculator. So when you get your bill at the end of the month, you have your line items of whatever you bought and the financial price of that. And then right next to that, you have the estimated carbon impact. We know that estimation needs to get more granular. And we also know, wouldn't it be great if our merchants provided that same data, not after you bought whatever your item was, but during that point of purchase where you're considering and you're comparing one product to another. So more work for us to do. But once you're inspired, you want to, you're informed, you know what is more sustainable in a trusted way. Third, how do you enable that? How can we create an easier pathway to choosing the more sustainable solution? And a great example here in New York, I'm from San Francisco. And in San Francisco, you cannot do this, but New York, you can. When I take the subway, or I took the bus this morning, I tap my Mastercard and I get on. In San Francisco, I have to wait in line, I get my Clipper card, load it up with money. It's a whole process. In Paris, where the Olympics just were, what did all those tourists have to do? They had to stand in line. Right? But in New York, in London, in Rome, in Amsterdam, all these cities that we've partnered with to take the friction out of choosing the lower carbon transit opportunity. So I have a responsibility to go back to my hometown and get them on board. We're working on this. But inspire, inform, enable. I think it's a great structure for all of you to think about in your businesses. How are you taking part in each of those efforts?
Yeah, it's the beauty of really the digitalization of our lives, right? Where a lot is very negative, that is a given, absolutely. But the positive effects of that also being like, we don't need to have that plastic card eventually anymore. We have it on your phone, whatever, the phone has its own impact. However, we can accumulate all of this information into one device. And then, as you said, just walk through the lines in the subway. Just get them cleaned up a little bit, and then everything is fine. But on that aspect here with B Labs, so going more into supporting businesses across the board, moving away a little bit now from the environmental impact. So talking about all the other DEI aspects of things, we've seen in the press, in conversations, many sentiments are that maybe DEI went a little bit too far now. It's a little bit too far to the left, et cetera. The pendulum has swung too far to the left. What would you tell business owners, but also consumers that have that concern? What is the actual impact? Can you share some stats of businesses that used your services that has improved their environment?
Absolutely. And this is definitely the moment we're living in. We can point to the recent Supreme Court decision on affirmative action as a highlight of how the business community and society as a whole is really thinking about how we approach these questions around not just DEI, but around worker well-being, around financial literacy, or how you're really supporting your communities as a business. And that's really what we're trying to address at B Lab. One of the things that we've done a lot is talk with the companies that are certified and that use our products to understand how they are communicating with their consumers and with their employees around these issues of sustainability. We did a research last year, and we found that over 70% of US consumers are willing to pay a premium for sustainable products.
70%?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a high number, and we see that as proof that there is interest out there in the market for businesses or services that are providing a benefit to society and to the environment. So we're engaging with companies to help them understand the practices that they can put in place to engage their communities, to support their employees, and not just necessarily thinking about terms like DEI or some of the more controversial ideas that might be out there, but thinking about more tangible terms. For example, ideas like a living wage or the benefits that a company is offering to their employees. Something that is very integral to a business practice, that every business needs to have a policy around how they're engaging their employees, how they're engaging their communities. So it's about being mindful with that and knowing how you want to engage those populations, because it does come back to the business. If you're investing in your employees, in your benefits, in how you're treating them, that's not just money that you're spending away. You're actually supporting the company to be more sustainable, and that in turn leads to more profits as well.
Very interesting. Yeah, very good. The aspect of that, you just mentioned financial literacy, and in our preparation in the conversation, I was also given, or it was highlighted that Mastercard is now, it's not a financial institution, it's a tech company. There's so many other aspects of this life that Mastercard touches. So from a perspective of business sustainability, you are putting the check mark, so to speak, behind the business to say like, yes, you achieve this, but you have to get there too. And so one of the stats that I came across here was that in this beautiful city of New York, where we have, it's basically the financial capital of this country here, as we see it. And the Bronx, we have 20% of people that live in the Bronx don't have a bank account. 30% of the people that have a bank account are considered financially illiterate. And so there is a lot to do to not only bring people to more banking or to have them bank more, but also to get the education out there to deal with financial products in the right way. What is Mastercard doing in that aspect to help people understand better how to deal with their financial business aspects?
Sure. Well, we're coming to you from the Tech Hub here in Manhattan, which today also happens to be the location where our president and founder of the Center for Inclusive Growth is working. So our center has been around for over a decade, right? Mastercard has been investing in and prioritizing inclusive growth and financial inclusion. And we have a commitment to financially include 1 billion people in the digital economy by 2025, and we are well on our way to achieving that goal by this coming year. So, the strength of our programs and the capabilities, not just here in the US, but also globally, are extremely thorough. They include all sorts of programs, everything, and I think a new angle of the program also includes connecting inclusive growth and financial inclusion to climate resilience and adaptation. So I think what's interesting.
How would that work?
So the one example that I use that I think is kind of the simplest way to get your head around it, when I joined Mastercard, which was about 2 years ago, one of the programs that I was being briefed on was a pilot we were working on in Egypt with a garment factory owner. And the owner was working to shift the payment process from cash to a digital mobile wallet for the workers in the factory. So relevant to fashion, talking about garment factory. And in that factory, 80% of the workers were female, 20% male. When the women would go home with the cash, the husband would take their cash. The father would take the cash, head of household, it wasn't theirs. When they switched over to the digital mobile wallet, the women were saving money, right? They were keeping agency over their income. And this was a completely different paradigm than what was happening before. Now, put in the context of this is Egypt, right? So there is already drought. They're already feeling the pressures of climate change. And they're in a position now that they're saving more money to be more resilient and adapt better to the facts of climate change. Bring that here to the Bronx, to some of the locations where probably the majority of people who show up in the study you mentioned that don't have financial literacy or aren't included, they're probably living in heat islands, right, where there are fewer trees and all of these things. So they're also being impacted more severely than other people in Manhattan, perhaps, or the surrounding areas. So there is a distinct connection that can be made between when somebody becomes financially included, financially literate, and if you go all the way up the chain to financial health as kind of the North Star of what our center at Mastercard is trying to achieve globally, it also brings with it climate resilience and adaptation benefits.
Amazing. I'm from Germany originally, so when I moved over here, that example of Egypt is incredible because even here, I had the first introduction when I came here and I was looking for an apartment, they were telling me where I can drop the paper check at the end of the month. So I was like, paper check. And that process, there's so many differences in this world that we forget about if you're not really open to that and see the change happen in front of us and how we can actually enable this. And with a company like yours, it's a great example how to empower businesses and also people alike at the same time. João, the challenge with anything of a B Lab certification, which I mentioned earlier, the 200 questions, we went through this. It wasn't easy. It was amazing in the sense of like what you learned there. But why would you challenge people to actually go through this rigorous process? And what is it that they can get out of it long term? Like we saw about the aspects here already with the 70%, that's great. What do you see happening long-term for businesses that go through the process?
Totally. And you're right, it is certainly an investment of time, of effort for a company to go through the B Impact assessment. But we think it's a worthwhile effort because every company has an impact on the environment and on society, whether they are trying to measure that impact or not. It really is about putting the time and effort into it to understand what your impact is and to try to map out how to improve it. Today, every company wants to be sustainable. They want to make claims around their impact and what they how they're interacting with society, with the environment. Going through this process, completing the assessment and being certified is a way to actually back up those claims. We always say that B Corp certification is combating greenwashing, and I think that that's very true. It's a way for companies to validate how they are impacting their communities and the environment, and we do see a lot of benefits that companies get from it. Not just the internal benefits of understanding where they are and being able to map out an improvement pathway to see from an aspect of being net zero by 2040 or by 2050, but going beyond that and saying what is the impact across the business that we want to have by 2040 or 2050. that is certainly one of the impacts. We also see a huge impact on employee engagement and recruiting from going through this process. People want to work for a company that shares their own values. Being certified as a B Corp and just using that as platform to understand their impact and improve it helps companies engage their own employees, because it is those employees that are providing the data necessary to go through this process. So when the employees feel like they are being a part of this process to improve their own company, that helps with engagement. And that in turn also helps with recruiting when people want to work for a company that is doing good with the world.
Absolutely. Happier employees have better products, happier customers, for sure. To wrap this up, I would love you to think about the question you might have here, but I would love to get into the point where, Ellen, to share with business owners or individuals, where would you guide them to? Where should they start? Where could they learn more about the initiatives that Mastercard has in place for them? But what's the best point of contact to start with you?
Sure. Well, one, I think it's to really think about the vision of how do you want to contribute to the solution. And again, maybe both from the responsibility side that your business has, and if you're in fashion, the type of packaging that you're using, the type of materials you're creating, the circular process that perhaps could be part of your business. So think about that responsibility, but then also think about the opportunity. Who are you selling to? Who are you going after, and what is their interest? What benefit and value could you bring to their lives? And put that frame of inspire, inform, enable on top of that. And there are small things you can do, right, to inspire. Maybe that's put your most sustainable products and services at the front of the aisle, right, so people see it. So their nudge happens. Speaking of nudges, you were mentioning the plastic on our cards. By 2028, we're the only company that's done this in our industry. We've required that all of our cards be made by bio-based or recycled plastics, right? So when that's sitting in your pocket and you're looking at that material, it's a small nudge. So there are things that you all can probably do in your business, just a small nudge of what's a signal that people could be inspired to think about. For Inform, are you providing any sort of information about the carbon footprint or the sustainability value of the product and service that you're offering? How are you helping to reduce carbon through the choices that you're making, and making sure you're advertising that, you're informing your customers of that? And enable, how do you reduce that friction for them to choose those sustainability items that have the features and benefits that are at the front of the aisle or whatever it may be? There's probably some creative ways that you can make that connection, because people are increasingly, you cited the stats, right? About how this is becoming a conscious purchase choice about sustainability. So embedding that in, inspire, inform, enable. We'll leave you with that.
Love it, absolutely. João, where can people learn more? Where should they start when they want to get involved with B Labs?
Well, you can find us online, very easy. wearebcorps.com is our website, so remember that. And with their website, you can find a lot of information on what B Corps are doing out there. We have case studies to inspire you. And then we have the actual assessment platform. It's called the B Impact Assessment. As I said, it's free, it's online, it's very easy to use. Really welcome any businesses of all sizes and all industries to create an account there and start using the platform to measure your impact. You can start going through the questions pretty easily and use that as a framework to help point where you are now and where you might want to be. And then if you feel like you're up for it, you can also submit the assessment and get started on your B Corp certification.
Wonderful. Are there any questions in the audience that... Yes, here you go.
Hi, my name is Lacey.
One second, we actually do have a microphone for you, Lacey. Wonderful.
Hi, my name is Lacey. I've been noodling on this challenge. So in any given organization or moment, there are understandably, even at a scale like Mastercard's, some kind of limited attention, energy, resources. And even in a situation where it's all for profit, or in this case, we're about doing good, yay, what are the ways that your decision making among opportunities, or initiatives in a way that you can best go for the ones that have the biggest impact? And then, in terms of impact, how is success ultimately measured when you're at the scale of Mastercard?
Sure, good question. So we have a dashboard of all of the goals that we've set, and we measure our progress, and you can see it in our annual ESG report about our carbon footprint reductions. I mentioned the growth versus the reduction in emission, all that's in our report. One of the interesting things that we did to help shift the culture, and we have about 30,000 employees, there's no way we're going to reach all these goals, to be net zero by 2040 or to financially include 1 billion people by 2025, if we don't have the power of the whole company really motivated behind that. So a couple of years ago, we changed our compensation structure. And a lot of companies have done it for the CEO or the executive team, that they're compensated against the ESG goals that a company sets. But we changed that for all employees. So if you work here, when I get my annual performance review in February, just like every other employee, the first line says, here's my salary and the percentage of my base salary that I got an increase on. The next line is my bonus and the percent of the bonus that I was rewarded that year. And then the third line is the ESG compensation modifier. So right now we have 4 parts to that. One is our scope 1 and 2 greenhouse gas reduction. The second is scope 3 reduction. The third is around gender pay parity. And the fourth is around financial inclusion. So we've picked 4 of our biggest, hardest, toughest goals and tied everybody's compensation to this. Wow. So that really focuses everybody on where is the biggest impact that we think we can have, what is the strategy that we need to go after, and how do we motivate everybody to be focused on it. Now, that might sound kind of simple, right? All right, change the compensation, then everybody falls in line. It doesn't work that way, right? So we've used the carrot stick of money, but then we followed that up with education. So everybody, all the 30,000 people also have to take a 10-minute ESG in action mandatory training course that orients them to what are we trying to do and why, and what is your role. That's at a very high level. Then we need to get more specific with job roles. So if you're in technology, for example, at Mastercard, you run our data centers. What are the top priority things you need to be doing? Things like decommissioning the most energy intensive servers we have and replacing them with more energy efficient technology. So we've written guides that they don't have all the answers, but they start pointing people in the right direction. For marketing, and there's a member of the marketing team here who's creating that action guide for our marketing team members. So everybody has a unique role that they can play. They're making decisions about whether we're going to hit our goal or not. They may not be as aware of it, but it's a journey to figure out how to align the incentives, like compensation, with the education awareness, and then finally, of course, resulting in the action that it's going to take to get there.
That's amazing. I mean, this is definitely something, a course maybe even then in the works for the future to teach businesses how to do that best, to implement that best. I think that's a great approach. Would love to. It's a whole nother panel that we can set up for this one. Yeah, that's great. Any other questions? Yes, in the front here.
I believe that you already answered the question that I was going to ask. So I was going to say, in certain communities, like, we're all awake to sustainability. Certain communities don't care. Like, I can't even get them to throw a plastic bottle in a blue bin. What can you do to get people who don't know about sustainability? One of the panels before, he was saying, it's about the future and our children. Some people they don't care about that either. I don't have children. I want my stuff now. I want to benefit now. For those people who you can't win with saving the planet or, punishment, you get them on board with payroll. What are some of the other ideas that you can suggest to someone like me who knows people who they're not on to sustainability? They don't care about, we use these buzzwords and these phrases that, we should definitely get on board. What do you do for the people who are harder besides paying them to get on board?
Any of you? Chime in.
So that's a great question. And I think that's a question people in my role, for example, have been wrestling with for quite some time, right? Like, how do we create more energy and action? Because, the clock's ticking, and we're all, again, those of us sitting here are probably quite aware of that. So I mentioned in that structure, inspire, inform, enable. So inspire, there may be some people who will never be inspired to live a more sustainable lifestyle. Like they just may not. And you can give them as much information about, oh, this is low carbon or made with recycled, a great new material or whatever. They won't care. Let's talk about enable, right? I mentioned the words taking the friction out of low carbon solutions. So for those people, if we go back to taking the metro, the what do you call it? The metro, subway, or the tube in London, or lots of different words. So we've taken that friction out. So it's more sustainable, right, to take the subway than it is to take a car, but it's also getting easier and more convenient, right? An example I didn't mention, we just launched this urban mobility hub in Amsterdam, and one of the partners that we showcased, it's a company called Free Bike out of Finland. And has anybody tried City Bike here in New York, right? So how do you ride the City Bike for the first time? You download the app, you put in your name and payment information, and click the button and you wait. About 15 minutes later, you can get on for your first ride. What city bikes all over the world are finding out is 60% of people who want to take a city bike hate the experience, right? That takes too long. Oh, wait, my credit card got declined because I typed in the number wrong. And so they stop. Free Bike, just now like the subway, you tap your Mastercard on the back of the bike and you get on. 5 seconds. Like no 15 minutes. So somebody who doesn't prioritize sustainability may not care that taking that bike versus taking a car is low carbon, but wow, it's easier, it's fun, it's faster, maybe. So it's thinking about lining up the other benefits that are also sustainability benefits and highlighting that as kind of your key selling point of why should you be choosing this. It may not always be sustainability needs to be the headline. It could be other reasons, but making sure how you're structuring your offering, if you're in fashion or whatever it is, that it's more beautiful of a design, it's more interesting of a design, but then it's also more sustainable. So I would say think about the other headlines too.
I can add some, because this is a question that we think a lot about at B-Lab, like how do we get to those people who are not predisposed to caring about impact and the environment and all of that. And I think of two things. One is around policy. Regulation is one thing that will affect us all, and will get even those who don't want to do the right thing to do it. So we engage a lot with policymakers, the national state level, to pass legislation around greenhouse gas emissions and what we call our benefit policies. So we could get really into it. We have a legal framework that we ask companies to adopt that allows them to take impact into their corporate decision making. So we work with policymakers around the country to do that. And we can point to the example of the recent EU and California directives on greenhouse gases as examples of every company who wants to work and sell in those markets have to comply with that legislation. One other thing that we really do at B-Lab to help get to those people who might not care or really like talking about B-Lab or about impact is just changing the way we frame these questions. One example is around DEI. When in areas or places where this topic can be more controversial, we just change the way, instead of talking about DEI, we might talk about economic empowerment or about practices around equity and pay policy. So just the way that you frame a question will really help you get to the audience that you want to.
I want to actually chime in there too. Both of that really speaks to getting to the customer where it affects them most, right? In this case, rewards, where it's just easier to use. It doesn't matter if they care for it or not, but it's easier to use. In our aspect here with the gaming environment, right, we're rewarding, we're working on an impact score, for example, to reward players that play games that, for example, you're planting a tree in the game that plants a tree in real life. So you really have an impact in the world. So that they maybe don't care about that tree planting, but they do it anyways because they love the game. The reward is then getting access to other elements of the gaming world, maybe access to an esports tournament, etc. So finding out what really drives your customers to change behavior is more important than to try to change their whole thinking, because that's the harder thing, I believe. Anyways, so we are coming to the conclusion here of our 3P series. Again, I want to say thank you first and foremost here to Mastercard's Tech Hub for having us, and also for Faye and Powell here to setting up the Green Show. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, João, for your input and all the great returns and information that you shared. So give a round of applause to these two panelists. Thank you very much. And I want to summarize this also. It seems like across the board, there's great synergies here. I mean, you're empowering businesses to do the right thing long term for sustainable business practices. You're checking off on that they actually achieved it. So all across the board, even empowering kids and helping kids around the city and also the country here. We coming all together with all the different panelists that we had on board here. So thank you very much for your input, for the work you do. And I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation in private setting here. And for everybody who stays for the show and the after party, we'll have a fun rest of the day. Thank you so much.